deal.
Did you enjoy the special? Did you enjoy it? This was phenomenal, and I cannot believe how prolific you are, because you've done like 3 major specials in like, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, not much time at all.
Yeah.
And it takes comics years and years to build up this much material, but you're also on a full-time sitcom and you're doing movies and stuff. Why are you structuring your time so much better than the rest of us? Like, how are you doing this?
I don't know. Well, when I shoot parks, I still am able to do a little bit of stand-up. When I get up early or something, I'll still do stand-up and stuff. But we have like a hiatus from usually from like March to like September or something like that. And I had one a few months ago, and I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? And there were a couple of movie things that came my way, but it was nothing I was really excited by. And I was like, I'm just gonna stay in New York and write more stand-up. So I wrote another hour in that time, and I think that's one of the cool things about being able to do stand-up is like you can do something like that. And movie stuff sometimes, how many movies come out that are like really good? You know, it's hard to find a movie that's really good, and then also there's like a part for some Indian dude, and then or like a part that they could be like, oh, well, let's not make it a white dude, let's make it an Indian dude. It won't fuck up the story, because sometimes that's a weird thing you never think about. It's like if I want to get cast in a certain movie, if there's like a white dad and it's like, well, we got to make all these people Indian now, like if we want Aziz in the movie. So there's all these things. So to find a part that's good for me in a movie I really like, where I can also be in the movie, it's tough. So, in the last hiatus I had, there wasn't anything that really came my way that I was like super excited about. So I was like, oh, I'm going to keep investing my time in stand-up, because then I develop more material and develop more ideas that will help me come up with my own scripts and things like that. So it just always seems like a good investment of time for me. So I that's why I've always kind of kept it as a thing in my life, and that's why I've been able to be prolific and come up with more stuff. Like, man, I haven't done that. It was weird. Like, I haven't heard that stuff in a while. I haven't performed it in a while, and I've written another hour.
Man, it's very annoying to hear that.
But it's weird to like see that stuff, and like it's weird because whenever these specials come out, I have to like go talk about it, and I'm like, oh well, I'm already like thinking about all this other stuff.
So this one does feel like you push yourself, because it felt like a progression, like you were maturing, because all 3 of them were so funny, but this one you were trying to do it felt like a different kind of funny. Like you were talking about your fears. I felt like a lot more like this is like the 3 biggest fears in life, like getting married, dating, getting married, and having babies.
Yeah.
That's like the big 3. Was it like turning 30? Was it seeing your friends starting to do this shit, or what was the? And it was also, as an artist, were you like trying to think, okay, now I want to do something more with more unity, more thematic unity, or?
Well, I think all my stand-up, the writing kind of comes from like, oh, what's really in my mind? What am I like thinking about? What's really in my head? What are the fears and thoughts I have? And around when I was writing that special, it was around the time where a lot of my friends were, getting married and having kids, and to me, it just seemed like, wow, I'm not ready to do this stuff, and it just really struck me like, wow, these are such huge dilemmas that every single person deals with.
Right.
Like every person is making this decision to get married or something, and it's so scary to me. And when I started talking about it on stage, I immediately realized like, oh, I'm not the only one that's scared. There's other people that's scared, and that's like a great feeling. And when we all get to like laugh about this stuff, it's kind of like, oh, cool, we're all in the same boat. We're all scared. It's fine. It's fine because we're all in it together.
One thing I read about your process in putting this together, I found really fascinating. I see you as sort of scientific a little bit in your process, because you're sort of like crossing over from comedy to anthropology. Because
wow.
I do. Well, I don't say that to everything. But you did something where, comedians will, go around and play clubs and try out material, but you actually went out to specific demographic groups, like segments, and said, I want to do a show for like people in their 20s and in their 30s, and this show I only want people over 40 to hear.
Yeah.
And so you were like, what did your research show you? What did you learn from What were the differences? What surprised you about the reactions you got?
Well, that was actually for the next hour I was developing. And the reason I did that is like, okay, you know, when I'm working on a show to like tour in like these big venues or whatever, I want to test it out in like kind of smaller audiences with like, you know, maybe like 100, 200 people or whatever. And the reason I did that is if you announce a show on Twitter for, you know, 200 seats or whatever, it'll just go right away. Like it'll be gone in 2 seconds. And the only people that are able to get tickets are people that are just like maniacally watching Twitter nonstop.
Right.
And so then you go to the show and you're like, who the fuck are these people that are just looking at my Twitter nonstop? And we're able to see the announcement 2 seconds afterwards. Like,
by the way, this show sold out in 2 seconds, so.
see, I'm scared I'm gonna get murdered later.
Yeah.
So.
It's been happening at the festival a lot.
Yeah. But so I came up with that email lottery system so people could have a chance if they didn't see it right away. And then the demographic thing was because, okay, like when I do a tour in like venues like where I filmed the special in, there's thousands of people and there's a big range of people. There's single people, there's married people, there's young people, there's old people. So I wanted that 200 to kind of mimic that and not just be what happens to be the people that see the Twitter message writer, which generally tend to be like young, single men. So it's like,
Right.
You don't want to just perform for a room full of those. When you're talking about relationships and things like that, you want to have like a cross section. And also, you know, if you see in that special that we just watched, like there's all this stuff about online dating and marriage and things like that. And a lot of that material came about from me like talking to audience members and stuff. Like, you know, I would like interview people kind of on stage. Like I drop in at like, you know, clubs in New York, like the Comedy Cellar or something. And I would talk to people about like, oh, have you ever done online dating? Like, what was your experience like? What sites did you use? And, you know, I would do something like that. And then I would stumble on to like the Jewish in my zip code guy or something like that. And that kind of became like my method of researching this stuff because I've never been married. I've never done online dating. So I would talk to people about this stuff. And with the next one, it's been the same thing. And so for me, then it was like, so the new show's about like courtship and how courtship has changed because of technology and things like that. So it's valuable to have older people in the audience so I can talk to them and be like, what did it used to be like? And so that's another reason why I wanted kind of a mix of people. But, you know, and I guess the primary purpose of that whole thing was just to have a mix of people that would kind of emulate what happens when I tour in a bigger space.
One of my favorite bits in the show was the 5-star restaurant gentleman.
Oh my God.
And I mean, do you just relish those moments when somebody is giving you that kind of stuff? Because you made it into such great stuff, and you're really just, your improv is wonderful, and it's like,
oh, thanks.
It's a nice mix because your prepared stuff is so brilliant and so polished, but I can just get the sense of delight in you. Like you seem to be just so happy when somebody starts saying,
God.
I went to 5-star restaurant for lunch. It was just, and the breadsticks, the whole thing. It's like that, you can't, I mean, that's just like a gift, right?
Yeah, that was one of the things when I was filming the special, I was a little bit concerned because that whole thing. So, you know, I don't know if this is even obvious to people that aren't familiar with, you know, being a stand-up or whatever, but so that special was at the end of a long tour, and, you know, the tour show is what, you know, was filmed there. That was a show in Philadelphia that was similar to shows that I did all over the country. And every show I would do this bit where I would interview people about the proposals. And eventually, when you do something like that, eventually you get pretty good at it to where it doesn't really matter what the person says. You can kind of make it into a funny thing that illustrates the ultimate point you're trying to make. But definitely some are more interesting than others. And when I was filming the special, I was like, fuck, man, I hope the person is good, whoever it is. I hope they're like one of the great ones. And you know, I thought about like, okay, well, maybe if they're like so-so, maybe at the end after the encore, I'll interview a few more people about their proposal things. And then these motherfuckers showed up, and I was like, what? It's honestly one of the, if not my favorite one of all the proposal stories, like definitely like top 3. Like I couldn't believe it. I was in Philadelphia a few weeks ago, and I was doing a show at some college or something. I was staying at some hotel, and like I was going up to my room, and you know, on one side was the rooms, and they had like a business center. And this woman was like, "Oh hey," and I was like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hey, how are you?" And she's like, "Hey, it's good to see you." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And I thought she was just someone that, you know, recognized me or whatever. And she's like, "You don't remember me?" And I was like, holy shit, it was the proposal lady.